Nick. Hey, Alana. Hey, Mark. My name's James Massell. I'm from movie Death Blows. Thanks for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mark, I'm interested. When did you first become aware of Alana's story? What made you want to direct this movie, Unfightable?
Well, I've worked with Combate Global, the MMA organization that Campbell McLaren started. I really have been working with Campbell, for 20 years. And when he started that organization, he asked me to help again, broadcasts or any. So I had become aware of Alana's story when they were kind of like talking about it and pitching it. And, he's like, I helped put a deck together. I helped get some assets together. And then really at some point, I'm an independent filmmaker. At some point he said, would you be interested in directing this film? And that's really how it came about. So I was aware of her story just because I was working, on the fights.
Gotcha. Alana, what was it like finding a promoter in Campbell and Combate Americas that was, open to you as a fighter? Because the MMA community as a whole is not that welcoming to, women of your stature and everything like that. I think from, listening to Jake Shields and stuff talk in the documentary.
Yeah, it was a surprise. It was a little bit unexpected. I actually got connected to him through Fallon Fox. But yeah, it was definitely an unexpected happening.
I wanted to take this interview because I've been watching MMA for about 15 years now. UFC 100 was my first ever event that I sat down for in 2009. And I've watched the sport grow, but I've also watched the people, the fighters and the promoters involved with it become not the best people, that there is. But like when you were growing up, do you remember watching UFC or any MMA fighters specifically that, basically inspired you to do anything like this?
Yeah, I grew up without TV, so I didn't get to see the earliest fights except for on like VHS recordings and stuff. But I was real big into MMA when I was in the army, and that would have been the era with like uh, Rich Franklin and Andrei Arlovsky. Like it was, you want to say like 2004 to 2010 kind of time frame. That's really when I got into it.
Gotcha. You know, Mark, for the documentary, did you want to include any other, MMA fighters in it besides like, the Jake Shields and the Fallon Foxes of the world, or anybody else you wanted to talk to that said no or anything like that? I know Colby Covington does come up at one point in it. We see him kind of like behind the curtains, but I don't know if he wanted to get involved speaking on camera or anything like that.
I mean, I wanted, anybody they're able to potentially get, I would have been open to it. As a lot of people, you just don't want to go on record or, to be honest. So it wasn't easy getting, either way to talk about positively or negatively. So, you know, it, it was who we got, who was available, who said yes. But yeah, I would have been open to talking to anybody. Again, it's positive or negative. I would have been open to.
One thing I recognize with you is a lot of people in your position are kind of like the happy warriors. They all want to be accepted and they're like, well, if you don't like me, that's fine. You have a totally different way of thinking. You're like, if you hate me and you don't like me and you want me to basically die, I hope you die too. And like, not to that extreme, but it's just like, if you think fuck me, then fuck you too. And I've never heard that spoken and said so well as the way you do it here. A lot of people are just like, I want to be liked by everybody. You don't have that ambition, it doesn't seem.
Well, I'm I'm in the position that I know that no amount of sucking up to anyone is going to get me anything. So there's a certain freedom in that. And I tend to speak my mind. And I feel like that's pretty common through fighters. Most fighters, well, a lot of fighters are known for speaking their mind. They just have very different opinions from me for the most part.
It's been 3 years since your first fight, your last fight, basically. What would you say the odds are of you getting another professional MMA fight at this point?
Not great. Not great. I've been trying to get one, but the landscape being what it is right now, yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe the documentary can move the needle, but just looking at the outrage that there was with the Olympics, and that didn't even actually involve a trans woman, but just everybody was ready to go all in on complete fabrication. So there's definitely a moral panic happening that is impacting my ability to get fights.
Yeah, I mean, I had made a bunch of different videos talking about the Amon Khalif situation, and like the total outrage that was going on with that was ridiculous. I was like, this woman fought at the last Olympics and nobody cared, but now because it's a huge deal, that's all everybody wants to talk about, and it's not even a true story. It's just nonsensical at this point. And like when you're talking about, the aura of the trans panic and everything like that, Mark, you did such a good job capturing of not just Jake Shields, but you had the human beard without humanity. Matt Walsh was in there for like 12 seconds and everything like that. Were there any? I mean, it just seems like the right wing influencers are just obsessed with this thing that really isn't this big of a takeover. It's just people trying to be who they are. And I think you did a really good job of capturing that. Was there anything else you kind of wanted to portray in that light?
Well, I wanted to use what's happening on social media. So there's a lot of pop-ups and YouTube things, and sometimes we stop and pause the film and all that, just because that world is just very reactionary. There's a lot of misinformation. But I also wanted to give, if somebody says something again like Jake Shields, uh, I wanted to give Alana the opportunity to answer to it, or somebody like athletes I like to answer to what they're saying and the disinformation. So again, I wanted to first humanize Alana, tell her story, and then get a little piece of what she's experiencing on social media, and have give her the opportunity to answer that misinformation.
Sure. Alana, I was talking about Matt Walsh before, and he'd had a quick segment in the documentary. He's like, Alana McLaughlin won easily in her fight. I was like, I've watched a lot of MMA fights. There was nothing easy about that win. I mean, I don't want to say you were getting your ass kicked there for a couple minutes,
I
but
was,
like,
I was.
I was like, if anybody who knows anything about MMA watched this, there's no way you could say she won that fight easily. Like that was a fight. They were both tired, and she got the choke, and that's what it was. So, like, what do you think about when people just make stuff up about you in fights? Like you mauled this
Well,
person. It didn't happen like that.
I've been pretty politically active the past few years, and I feel like it's less that they're not really like just it's not entirely just making things up. I mean, they are making things up, but like this is a propaganda effort. Like when you have people claiming to be news outlets and then they selectively clip like the last 20 seconds of the fight and then claim that I like won in the first round, like which also didn't happen. It's there's a lot of selective clipping, and it's because they have the story they want to tell and they're trying to fit the narrative to that story. Um, so I mean, like I said, you saw everything that happened with the Olympics, and this is much the same kind of situation. It's like people claiming that Fallon Fox broke someone's skull when like an orbital fracture and a caved-in skull are two very different things.
Yes,
It's pure
exactly.
misrepresentation, and there's political will and money behind it, and that's why you have stories like that taken off.
Alana, why do you think it was so difficult for you to find a training camp or just, somewhere to train with? Was it the coaches? Was it the fighters in the gym? Or was it just like felt like nobody wanted you before MMA Masters took you in?
I mean that all of the above. I mean, yeah, I don't think it's any secret that the vast majority of the MMA space is, home to some pretty far right politics. You've got the UFC trotting out Donald Trump at events regularly. You've got, well, I mean, the flag waving patriotic bit. Like there's very little um, sort of left political representation in those spaces. And you figure even just like training like regular people, most of the time, your martial arts training camps, the people they're usually trying to appeal to. Um, they train a lot of cops. They train a lot of folks that have sort of panic about where they live, like, oh, somebody's going to rob me in the street, and that's not that common, but it prepares for scenarios that people imagine in their heads. And I think that sort of self-selects for a certain ideological bent. So, when you look in the mixed martial arts space, like I would say at least 90% like pretty hard right politics. So finding a training camp that, especially with all this like culture war background radiation going on, um, you know, uh, it's difficult. Even just where I was training in Portland before I even had any designs on competing. Um, that one of the guys I was training under was just, openly transphobic, anti-vax, talking about like bone broth will cure everything. Just there's a certain type of personality that has a lot of pull in MMA.
I like to refer to them as ghouls. That's just my personal opinion.
I
That's the way
mean,
I see it.
yeah,
You'd probably have more words to say than that, but
I'm,
I like to
I'm,
refer.
I'm, I'm choosing my words carefully.
We did talk about the training camp you had at MMA Masters, and one of your teammates was Colby Covington. I think he got mentioned in there. We got to see him. You mentioned the MAGA hat, but I watched Colby when he was coming up, and he was like this soft-spoken wrestler. And then, like after Trump came into office, he became like this louder-than-life personality. And I was like, I'm pretty sure most of this is an act, but I don't know him that well. You've gotten to train, maybe with him or in that, same area. Do you think it's mostly an act, like, or do you think he's a serious person like that?
Well, I had the great fortune of not actually having to interact with him. I saw him across the gym a couple times, but at the time that I was training, he was challenging for the championship. So there wasn't a lot of interaction with the other fighters. And certainly not with me. Like I never spoke to him. I don't know or care if it's just an act. I mean, the fact of the matter is if you're going to represent yourself as the racist fighter, I'm gonna take you at your word and assume that, you're at least casually entertaining those thoughts. Um, I
Sure.
take people at face value.
Well, that's all I got for you guys today. I appreciate you both sitting down with me to talk about the documentary Unfightable. I can't wait for everybody to see it and let them. I had a great time with it. I'm big at MMA, but I can't wait for the rest of the world to see that. And your story, Mark did a great job. Alana, you did a great job, being yourself and everything like that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.